So then, we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, let's make an evaluation of what's going on as far as Luke number 4 and also Yeshayahu regarding the 61st chapter, where then the layers of the spring feast, the autumn feast, then are evidently given the understanding of the time, not only of the restoration period, but also indicating the time of the autumn feast. So then, many people, they are searching for areas or then congregations while then trying to learn what the Messiah then taught. The question is, do we want to do this in order for the people to become saved, or do we want merely traditions? We should ask these questions because it is important establishing what the Messiah has left as far as his legacy, and the importance of making a distinction, convenience versus duty. Let's read then what the Messiah himself has done, because he is the most important person we can ever read regarding then the second tabernacle services. Now the point is this: do people want learn on their own and do whatever they want, or they want to learn the holy instructions and then becoming disciplined as far as how to read and how to instruct other people? In other words, showing them the layers related with the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, and most importantly, the Messiah himself. Now, the point is this: if you think situations regarding congregations, if you think you can conciliate niceties, inconveniences, and discipline, then people are sadly mistaken. Convenience and discipline, they don't go together. Either you favor one or you favor the other. So then, was the Messiah then against families? We must say this because the Messiah himself said he came then to set his father against his mother, and then son against father and mother, and then brothers against each other. On the other situation, he was saying then that his congregation should be like a family. Where do we draw then the idea of what he was trying to say? People are always trying to weasel themselves out of any kind of tribulation or troubles. But why should we then persist in helping other people becoming yet more studied without envying them? Have you ever felt sometimes in congregations when somebody comes with an understanding, and then people, they become envious, and they act in a couple of ways. Either they are very friendly, but they don't invite very often to become part of the team, or they simply give the basics, but they are never interested in learning more. What was the Messiah then involved when he was completing the spring feast? What was his reaction? What was his objective? Should we learn the Torah? Absolutely. Should we learn the Torah of the first tabernacle service? We should. Should we learn the Torah of the second tabernacle services? We don't do very often. Not from the enlightenment of the Torah itself. The Messiah then was baptized, or he was mikvahd, then by Yohanan the mikvah, or then John the Baptist. He was there in the Jordan River and he was baptizing the people, and then came the Messiah and he was baptized. Instantly then, when he came out of the water, then Ruach HaKodesh came upon him and led him into the desert. Now this truly is very big, because people don't tend to understand Ruach HaKodesh. Now, they truly want to make themselves holy only because they have a family. Oh boy, this is true. The Messiah did not have any sin. Why then he was sent to the desert and then he was fasting? It's a very important question, because making a person come to this world, had no sin, and then going to baptism, then Ruach HaKodesh comes in him and then leads him to the desert. Quite honestly, for me it doesn't make any sense. Because you must ask, why the Messiah then went to the desert if he had no sin? There is only one answer, and one answer only. It's because he was teaching us the way of becoming fruitful on his behalf. This was the objective. Now, when people they come together and they have a relationship and so on, they have a family, they pose themselves as holy only because of the fact that they have a family. The hypocrisy becomes from this point on. Now, should we then downgrade relationships? No. But people sometimes they want more relationship with the Creator Himself, and then they place their family in front of His face and saying to Him that they are holy enough only because they have a family. What was then the Messiah explaining of the cares of this world? What was the tone of his voice? What if he was explaining? Now let's make this very clear. Shaliach Shaul, when he was explaining as far as the family situation, he was mostly explaining areas related with those Hebrews or those Jews. They had a relationship with the Gentiles. from the time of the dispensation of Ruach HaKodesh until the household of Cornelius, there was a span of time of some 10 plus 5 years. No Gentiles came to the faith during this time. Afterwards, then, most of these people whom then Shaliach Shaul was explaining, and he then advised them as far as how they should relate with each other, because Gentiles, they have no control over their sexual desires. And the Hebrews should. Now, situation is this. What is the objective of a sexual relationship is obviously of starting a family. That's the only reason for it. When the Creator was explaining these sections as far as we can understand, the writings of Shimon or Solomon, Solomon was dirty. He had roughly 700 wives, so he was a sexual predator. He had no control over his own body. And he explains, the duty of a man then is having a wife and then being satisfied with, the breasts of the wife. This is junk. If you read very cautiously the content, Solomon was a frustrated man. He had everything that he could put his hands on, yet he was a frustrated man. Because he went beyond the limitations of a family to do what he should not be doing, but because he was the king, then they had to put up with him. In the holy cities, when they were obviously in a desert, those people, they would not have sex very often, because it's not the plan of the designer. We are not like animals. Now we're trying to make ourselves as animals. And many people, they are like rats. They have absolutely no control over their bodies. Shaliach Shaul has said, it is proper for a man not to touch women. What was he explaining? When a person is doing a service, similarly of the kind the Messiah himself was involved with, family is a hindrance. Now, is the Messiah condemning having sex? No, he's not condemning. If you want to start up a family, you must do this and then start up your family. But you can be sure of it, when you have a family, you are not very productive. Let's be honest. You always measuring your words so then you don't hurt anybody. You're always being absolutely friendly so people don't get hurt. And where is the salt in the whole situation? What about those preachers that are always talking of the Torah and the prophets at times, explaining if you are obedient to the Torah, then God's going to give you a house, a car, a nice family, you're going to be, riding this life as you are then in a magic carpet. The reality of what the Messiah was saying is absolutely contrary. That's why he said, because of the cares of this world, they can produce fruit. Now, the Creator himself gave us very specific mitzvot, or then laws regarding purification. As far as coming together during the time of Israel was to produce children. Let's make this clear once again. The Creator himself was involved in leading his people to the promised land. He gave directives for what they should do there and what should not do there. When you get there, you must clear the land. You have to get rid of those nations that are involved with paganism, so then they would not contaminate the Hebrews. In order for them to do this, they had to multiply. So they were encouraged of having sex, so then the nation would increase. You have sex with your wife, you have to wait for 9 months. You don't have sex with your wife anymore after she's pregnant. If you do, you're a dirty animal. Then you have to wait 9 months. She has children, or a kid, or he or she. Then you have to have another period of time. Then you come together again based from the laws and instructions the Creator gave as far as cleaning and purification. Then you have another child. Then you have to wait for another 9 months. And then the nation of Israel was then multiplying. In a family in a city, per the instructions we have from the Holy Torah, men and women should not be coming together very often. And each of them should give their 100% of their focus in learning the Torah. Now, the sexual desires must be substituted by the desire of reading the Word. Shaliach Shaul said, the best way of giving the best service on behalf of the Messiah, don't touch a woman. Now, the touch he was trying to say is sexual. And this topic is extremely important because we are not like animals. Pigs, they mount each other. Dogs, they mount each other. Beasts of the field, they mount each other. What about humans? Do they mount each other? No. The Creator himself gave them the order of multiplying in order for the nation of Israel to become a nation with many members, so then they could war against the other nations that were in the land. This truly was the objective and is the objective in explaining as far as God's people, those who are in line with the Torah. They only have sex when they want to have children. The rest of it is studying the Holy Torah. And saying to other people, God has named us out of the world, so then we learn the whole instructions and teach the people that we are not like animals. Now, there is a section in the Holy Instruction saying, then giving pleasure to his wife. Understandable. You find these in the Torah. Sometimes you find these in the writings. Because it was for the purpose of increasing the number of members of the nation of Israel. So then, can we understand why sometimes we are not fruitful for the Messiah? People, they come together in a relationship, they want to have a great sex. They want to use lingeries. They want to have sexual fantasies. And then they want go on a nice trip, and then, they want to be like what the world is doing, mounting each other. What about the restraint and obedience as far as this discipline of what the Creator has given us? He gave us specific understandings as far as the nation was going through a period of time while they were in the land that the people had to be multiplied. So he established specific instructions. When the lady then is there and there is a period of time, don't touch her, don't play with her, leave her alone. And then when this time then is expired, then wait for a bit longer, then you can make children. So the armies of Israel would multiply. Now in modern days, sometimes you go to a congregation, you don't hear of the spring feast, you don't learn the autumn feast. People learn only the substance of the feasts themselves, and they practice some of the feasts, and they don't understand the spiritual factor of these spoken of by Yirmiyahu the prophet, whom Israel has destroyed. And the Messiah came and reminded them that Israel had destroyed the prophets because they didn't want to listen what the Creator has to say. And then they make stories for their own. Not because if you're in a relationship you can have sex with your husband and wife. No, you can't. If you're not having children, you shouldn't. Because there is no reason for it. If a dog is mounting a she-dog with a he-dog, what's going to come out of it? Pops. Now, why some people are taking medication, people are taking sometimes drugs, because these people, they have demons in them, and they don't want to take a stand before the Torah and say no to these desires that shouldn't be there. Because sex in the world is rampant. Today in the world, if you find a mate that is virgin, it is already a situation that is very rare. Now, when we come to the faith, we understand what the Holy Hebrews did in the past and their obedience before the Holy Creator. They started a deal with the Creator Himself that would save many souls. Try to understand, there is a Sheol, or then Inferno, where the souls of the people are going to be stored in it until the end of this age. Now let me ask you this, if we can't control ourselves and our own desires, as husbands and wives and then singles, how are we going to understand the spiritual situations? And the Messiah said, you ask and you don't receive because you asked so you can spend your own pleasures. In the holy cities of the Messiah, there is no sex. People are working for an objective. That's why they are holy. We are there to serve. The whole point of the city in the desert was, the focus point was tabernacle, or the tabernacling. The presence of the Creator Himself was there on the top of the Ark of the Covenant. Now, how can for a second a person delink himself with the Creator while in His presence, near Him, and be joining in sex that does not produce children? Is not the presence of the Creator enough? And people, they are acting like animals. Is it rough? Is it tough? No, it's not. So the Torah can be very convenient if we read only what we want. Because when the Messiah came, He went to the desert and He had no deal in the desert. He had no sin. Yet He was led by Ruach HaKodesh to the desert. Now, what kind of subjection of flesh the Messiah had to do in His own if He had no sin? It was for our teaching. We must subject our flesh. If oneself, either he or she, if he can't control themselves, how they are going to serve the Holy Creator? What they're going to start is simply a club of reading or some sort of a congregation, but what about the power of Ruach HaKodesh? There are people who are in a congregation for 50 years. What kind of a function do they have? One of the 7 spirits of Elohim, 7 functions, what do they have? They have nothing. They have a club of reading. Are they saved? You have to ask them if they understand Revelation. We are not dealing with the Uncle Joe that has on the corner over there a convenience store. We are dealing with the creator of the heavens and the earth. And if we can't control our desires, can be sure of it, we won't be able to produce fruit. So when then Shaliach Shaul says the best for man not to touch a woman, it's because it's the only way a person can produce fruit. Shaliach Shaul also said, now if you can control yourself, this is an exception. Now if you can't control yourself, then you should be in a relationship so then you can have a family, so you can get busy with. Because you have proven already that you can control your own desires, so then you have to have a family to get busy with the world's cares. You can be sure of it. Nicey families, they're always expecting someone else to do the job. And they have the understanding of God as, if He doesn't make even more convenience on behalf of the congregation, then it's not of God. I don't understand this point. When a person comes with the true teaching, if it does not make convenient for the congregation or for the people, then it's not of God. That's maybe why then they destroy their own prophets. Next time we're going to evaluate the works of the prophets and verify why they were slaughtered. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.